In this video, we're going to look at 6 quick cash strategies to get your cash to go through the roof, and none of them cost a cent. Oops, by the way, you might notice a few more grey hairs, even though I'm wearing the same shirt. The videos you're about to be watching are from a couple of years ago. Don't worry, I have put a little bit of weight on since then, but everything's okay. You'll still get all the information that you need out of these videos. Down in the description, you're going to find a link to where you can use my free online tool to help you get the most out of this with your exact numbers for your business and how much cash you can find lying on the table in your business today. So the first thing we're going to need to do is set up your baseline. All you need to do is run your profit and loss statement for the last 12 months and enter the various figures as we've got here below. I'm going to use my standard example where I have $500,000 of revenue in a business. Cost of sales is $200,000, and you'll notice that it's automatically calculated your gross profit figure and what the percentage is, and then also the fixed expenses I'm going to put in today of $200,000. And as you'll see, it's done all the calculations here nice and easily for you already. Once you've got that completed, hit the next button, and we're going to move on to our first strategy.
Now we're going to talk about the most obvious strategy that there probably is, and that is increasing your prices. But here's the thing, do you know who's going to have the biggest problem with increasing your prices? You, the business owner. Of all the people I've ever worked with, the person who is going to have the biggest problem with it is the business owner. And usually that's because the business owner undervalues the skills and experience that they have achieved in all the time they've been in business. How long have you been doing what you're doing? 5, 10, 20 years, a long time, it doesn't matter. So in that time, you've built up a wealth of knowledge and experience. And there's a guy called Robert Cialdini, and he wrote a book called Influence. And in this book, Influence, he tells the story of a seaside village and a tiny little shop. And this tiny little shop would sell all sorts of kind of touristy knickknacks and so forth. And the shop owner had a bunch of different little rings that they couldn't sell. They were nice, attractive looking rings, but it didn't seem to matter. So she said to her shop assistant, she wrote them a handwritten note and she had to leave. That was to put the prices up. And she wrote the number, $4.50, on this piece of paper, and she left it with the shop assistant for when they came in to reprice it, put it out the front in the specials box. And what happens, very interesting, the shop owner comes in the next morning and she can see that the box or the sales special rack out the front was gone, everything had sold. And she said to the assistant, wow, that's fantastic. We sold all the rings. It was, all we needed to do was, put them out on a special price. Now, if you watch my discounting video, you know I'm not a fan of this. And the shop retailer, the assistant said, yeah, who'd have thought they would have sold for $45 each? See, what happened was when the owner wrote the number on the bit of paper, they didn't make it clear enough. And the shop assistant thought it said $45, not $4.50. And the reason it worked is because of the perception. The people perceived that because these were so expensive, they must be the best. Now, this is such an interesting strategy. I would encourage you to be the most expensive, whatever it is in your particular field, because that is the perception that people will have, is that you must be the best.
So with that in mind, let's see. Let's put in a price increase of 5%. So what we're going to do is enter 5 into this number here, into this box, and then we're going to press next.
Now for a strategy, we're going to look at cutting your cost of sale. Now costs, COS is not just the letters. It's a really important part of your financial statement, your profit and loss statement, which you've probably watched the video on for now. Now, just quickly to remember, a cost of sale is also called a variable cost. It's also called a cost of goods sold. It's a cost you incur because you get a sale. Okay, so if you've sold something, that is where it will sit on your profit and loss statement. If you're using subcontractors to do particular work that's related to a project or a sale, they will go into your cost of sale. Okay, so the principle with cutting your cost of sale that we're going to look at here is something called win-win or no deal. Okay, because you can either get a win-win, you can get a lose-win where you lose and the supplier wins. You can get a win-lose where you win and they lose. We don't really want that, or we get a lose-lose. Okay, so we're going to go back to our suppliers with that in mind and have a bit of a conversation. So first of all, have a bit of an idea about what kind of reasonable new pricing you'd like to get with this particular supplier. And just upfront, ask them, how about a better price? Now, I mentioned in one of the earlier videos a great book by a guy called Scott Pape called The Barefoot Investor. And he talks about some different scripts and so forth that you can use there. Now, first off, your supplier might go, well, no, I think we're okay. We're happy with how things are. It's a competitive marketplace. Just because they say no to your first request doesn't mean there's not other options available. But just by asking, sometimes you can get a massive improvement. So there's a story here about one of my clients, past client, a guy called Michael Weeks, who read one of my books, and he went back to his suppliers and he found an extra $65,000 just by asking the question. So if they say no to you on the first time, that's okay. What we want to do is go back to them and say, well, what sort of volumes would we need to be buying from you to actually get better pricing? Perhaps we can be combining different suppliers that we're getting and getting them all from the one. So that's why you've got to be clear on what it is that you'd like to get from them. Go back to them again and say, hey, we're looking around at different suppliers. I know you're probably really keen to keep our business. Tell us, what do we need to be buying from you in order to get better pricing? Now, if they still don't come to the party, ask them, what can you do for us? How can you help us out? How do we get a win-win here? We want to look at reducing some of our costs. You want to keep us as a customer. How are we going to work that out? Because ultimately, if they're not prepared to move and they're not valuing your business, then maybe it is a good opportunity for you to start looking around at some of the other ways you can be buying from suppliers and getting better prices. Our next strategy that we're going to look at is about reducing your fixed expenses. And the way I look at this, it's a bit like naughty little children at a shopping centre or somewhere, and I'm sure you've seen it, where little kids are running amok and the parents just can't control them. Where are the naughty little children on your P&L? You see, here's the thing. As we're going through business, things are sneaking onto our P&L, our fixed expenses. You know, maybe we're not watching our phone bill closely enough. Maybe we've got subscriptions that we're not using anymore. The thing about the expenses, the operating expenses on your P&L, they've got to do one of two things if we're going to get these naughty little children under control. Number one, it must get you a customer, a new client. If an item on your P&L in the operating expenses isn't getting you a new customer or a new client, it shouldn't be on there. The second thing it needs to do is keep a customer. If you're not keeping a customer because of that expense, you really need to have a look at it and see if it should be on that list of your profit and loss expenses. The other places to check for this one are benchmarks and industry associations. When was the last time you got in touch with your industry association? Or maybe you can even just Google it. What percentage of wages should my business be as a percentage of sales? What percentage should my rent be? In fact, you can look up the ATO for your industry, whatever it is. They have a bunch of different options that will give you references for where you need to be. So get the reference for the percentage that the item on your fixed expenses need to be. If you're above it, then it's probably not getting you or keeping you a customer. You need to look at ways at reducing it.
So, thinking about your suppliers, if you go back and ask for a better price, what do you think you could get? In this example here, I'm going to use 5%, nice easy number, I want to keep it simple. And then also, what do you think you can decrease your fixed expenses or your operating expenses by? Now, again, keeping it simple for this example, I'm going to use 3%. Once you've got that number in for your business, whatever you think you can do, hit the next button.
Discounting. In fact, I've renamed it disprofiting because it's the same thing. So, as the flip chart says here, stop it. In fact, if ever I hear any of my clients say the D word in a session that I'm with, I kind of twitch a little bit. And I'm going to show you why it is such a dangerous and debilitating thing. Let's step through a real example here. So imagine we've just bought something for $100. You know, it could be you selling some $100 worth of your team's time. It could be a product. It doesn't matter. And we're going to mark it up by 50%. So if you've watched the markup and margin videos, you'll know what this is all about. And we're going to sell it for $150. So we've got our product, service, whatever it is, out in the marketplace, $150. Margin is $50, the fancy word for what we get to keep. what happens when we discount. So Mr. whoever, Miss whoever comes in and is asking us for a discount. Now, what do? Do you give them the discount? Here's what happens. You might agree to giving them a 10% discount. You think 10%, it's nothing, yeah? Okay, so this is what a 10% looks like and why I twitch a bit when anyone ever talks about doing this. Here we go. We've still got to pay that $100 for the product or service that we've on selling, but the 10% discount, 10% of 100 is 10. Oh, sorry, 15. 10% of 150 is 15. So now our sale price is 135. We've actually cut a big chunk of our profit. In fact, it's 30%. Warning, Will Robinson, warning, stop, don't do this. So you might as well throw away 30% of your margin. That's your profit. Remember, margin is a fancy word for what we get to keep. So just stop it, don't do it. If you think about every time you've given just a 10% discount in the past, it's quite frightening if you think of all the money you've given away. However, think of how much money you're going to save now going forwards because you've decided to stop doing this. And we're going to show you how to get through the discounting problem that a lot of business owners have. What about if we flip it? What about if we say instead of discounting by 10%, you went away from this video and put your prices up by 10%? And we're going to talk about this a bit later on. In this instance, 10% of 150, as we worked out before, is $15. Now our sell price is $165. We've still got to pay our original $100, but guess what? We've just grown our margin by 30%. So a 10% change in your pricing is going to give you a 30% up or down based on these numbers. There's not every number that's like this. It depends on your business. Shift in what's happening with your margin. So from now on, no more profiting, no more discounting. We're going to look at better ways to do that. So the discounting dirty word. What percentage of your sales do you think you discount on? If for every 10 sales you do, how many do you think you're giving a discount on? I'm going to keep it simple again. I'm going to say 1 in 10 or 10%. And the average discount, again, keeping it simple, I'm going to go with 10%. Once we get your numbers in, hit next. So our next strategy is about following up our past clients and our past prospects. Like it says here, the fortune is in the follow-up. Now you'll notice this picture that I've got here on the screen is a crusty old card that's kind of been bashed around. It was sent to me from a friend from ages ago about following up and how sales occur and the statistics that are associated with it. So let's step it through. First of all, and this is where it starts to blow me away because this is an example of the 80-20 principle in its perfect glory. 48% of salespeople never follow up with a prospect. Is that you? Do you do a quote and then assume the client's going to get back to you and never follow up? You're amongst the majority of the people who do it. So it's not such a bad thing, but it's leaving money on the table. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and stop. Maybe you might give them a call and say, how's it going? Did you get the quote? What do you think? Or so forth. 12% of salespeople only make 3 contacts. Not many. Now remember, the title of this is The Fortune is in the Follow-Up. Only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts. Only 10%. You see, the thing is, when someone says no to a sale, it doesn't mean no, not ever. It might just mean no, just not now. But sometimes we forget that. What about sales and the timing of when they're actually made? 2% of sales are made on the first contact. Now, obviously, it depends on what size of sale you're dealing with here, but the bigger the sale, generally, the more contact points you're going to need. If you're going in to buy fish and chips, then you don't really need to be worried too much about having multiple contacts to get with that particular prospect in that business. 3% of sales are made on the second contact. 5% are made on the third contact. How many times are you following up? Remember the statistics from above. 10% of sales are made on the fourth contact. Really still quite a very, very low number. But here's the thing that blew me away when I first saw it. 80% of sales are made on the 5th to 12th contact. My sales process has 12 steps in it to make sure that I'm having enough contact points with whoever it is I'm dealing with. So your contact point can be made up of a number of different ways. Apart from your initial contact to organise a meeting or have a call with them, you can let them know that you're on your way. You can send them a text message. You can follow them up the day after and say, hey, just want to say thanks. You can check that they've got the quote or the whatever that you've sent to them. Keeping in touch with them, having a regular series of touch points is where it's going to really start to boost your sales process. Good sales is boring. Having a solid sales process system in place is key. You're going to see an example of a sales process that I use as one of the tools you can download, and using all the scripting and the language that's parts of that as well. So another fantastic example of the 80-20 rule. Following up is absolutely key. Let's have a look at what impact that has on your bottom line by checking in with the case study.
Follow up, follow up, follow up again. What do you think you could do increase-wise if you had a follow-up system in your business? Most people have big numbers, but I'm just going to go with something conservative here. I'm going to keep it nice and simple, 5%. Once you get your number in there, hit the next button and we'll move on to the next one.
Our next strategy is called margin magic. How do we start to apply the 80-20 rule and focus on where our most profitable clients and services are? So if you remember, if you've watched the 80-20 rule, 20% of our activities gives us 80% of the results. 20% of our clients gives us 80% of our profits. So what does this look like? If we look at this bar chart here, and down the bottom you can see the 20% is the part in green, and the part in the bony color above it is the 80%. So let's consider our clients or our products or our services. We want to work out what the top 20% of either clients, products or services is that gives us 80% of our margin. And the way you do this is list out all your clients and customers, all your products, all your services on 3 different spreadsheets or however you want to do it. And you're going to put in there how much margin you're making on average from each one of these. And then we're going to arrange them in order, okay? So that we can start to understand where they are. Because the converse of the 80-20 principle is that 80% of your clients, products or services are only going to give you 20% of the margin that you're seeking.
Margin is magic. Knowing what your margins are is so important. So let's have a think about it. What percentage of your total sales is your highest margin product or service? So if you think of everything you sell, what amount of that is made up of where you make the most money? So for this example, I'm going to use 40%. Okay? And what's the margin on that? Do a bit of a calculation and work it out. For this example, I'm going to say it's 50%. And then if we focused on selling more of this particular product, what do you think you could increase the amount of sales in this particular product by? I'm going to punch in a nice simple 20%, getting focused on it. Once you get your numbers in, hit next. So as you can see, for this business, those tiny little tweaks have added up to an extra 79 grand per year in their business. I'd love for you to put in the comments down below how much extra cash you were able to find using this system. There you have it. 6 easy free strategies to put in your business. I'd love to see how much extra cash you've made. Put your comments down below. Would love your feedback. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Keep an eye out for the next one.